Hello everybody, I hope you had fun doing the duck. I thought we would have a go at doing a funky chicken now. So let's get started. For this bit you're going to need a pencil, sharp and a rubber. And this is the picture, the reference that we're going to do. I found this lovely chicken. So we're going to start off just imagining where we want kind of our chicken to go to. So we've got to get these lovely legs and feet in. So I think I'm going to roughly put a line here. You can see that. That's where the bottom of his body is going to go to. Then we're going to come up to under this bit here. You see under the red bit. I can't remember what the name of that is. So we've got our start and finishing line. Now I'm going to show you another technique. So we can use our pencil a little bit like a ruler. So we're going to use from here measuring, and we're going to move our fingers up and down. So if I come across to the picture and I take the width, so from this point here to there, that gives me a measurement. If I then tilt that round, that comes to about there, and then we've got a little bit of a space. So what that tells us is this is slightly longer than here. So I'm going to come on here, come down from that point, so roughly my pencil line, and then I can give myself 2 dots which will tell me the width of my chicken. Okay, so then we're going to have our head on top of there. So let's start having a look at that shape. So I hope you can see these lines on the recording. And then we're going to have legs coming out here. So if we break these shapes down here, can you see that shape on the picture? So we're going to curve here, we're going to come in this much. So it comes out, because he's got a twist on his body, hasn't he? So he goes like that. We're coming up from that point and we're going out here to here, before we then start coming up to his neck there. Right, let me just have a look. I'm just going to remove, I'm really sorry if you can hear my dog again. She's under the table destroying her toy, so I do apologise if you can hear that. She is wrecking the giraffe as we speak. Okay, so let's keep going, even with distractions. We're going to come and we're going to go round. Now remember, this is our bit over here. That's our widest bit. So this bit comes in that much. So we want to make sure that we get that in. And there's this diagonal. So at the moment we're not worrying about all the fluffy bits. We're just trying to get things in the right place. So I'm having a look at where that point is over here on the wing. And I'm not far out. And then this point here then comes kind of fluffy round down. And we want this point here. I've gone a little bit too low. Can you see? A little bit too low. If I look at this there, that's no problem. This is the whole point of doing the drawing, is that we put it on, we do it nice and lightly. Mine's a bit darker so you can see it. But this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to feel where all our shapes are and where they come to. So it's all right to make mistakes, basically. So we need to find out where this bit is. So we've got this bit over here. So we're going to come down from this point and we're going to come across. So we're also trying to get that point from there. So we're about here, I think. So we're looking at the distances from either side. And then he is going to come up, his neck is going to come up there. We've then got his back. So that point is there. We're going to come up a bit. We're going to come across. And then we've got his back, which is then going to go in to his fluffy tail feathers. And then these are going to come up here. Now, I don't know where that bit is yet, so I'm not going to put it in. So, what we do know is this line actually. So we can see this dark shape. So often when I'm drawing animals, you've got difference of hair. So even on, like, say, like a black Labrador, you've still got difference of their hair where the light's hitting it, different shades. So we now know that we're going to be putting in these funny little shaped bits. And I'm just looking, actually, we could do that measuring thing so you can practice it. So I'm going to go from the top of the head of the chicken, just seeing if it was what it was. So that actually, so from the bottom of these red bits to the top of the head is roughly the same as from there to that working line. So let's use that as a gap. So just bear in mind, this is kind of a ratio. So we're using that to guide us. You could be doing a chicken, a massive chicken on, say, a wall. It's still going to be the same ratio. So it might be a much bigger size, but it's still going to be the same ratio. That is equal to that. Hope that makes sense. So now we have a little bit, luckily, maybe should have moved him down a little bit, but I think we're just going to squeeze on there with his kind of crown bit. I probably should have looked up all of these names before bits of chickens. So, but it doesn't matter, it's all about our drawing. Now, let's have a look at where this shape is. So we're going to come in from here. And this bit, the crown I think is a bit at the top, isn't it? We're going to then put that shape in, diagonal line there. He's then got another red bit that comes up higher, see, in a V there, and that goes to like a cheek there. On this side, that comes underneath, that goes angled. So remember, we can use our pencil, our finger, sorry, over here. And then from this point, there's like a wiggly, weird bit on there. This comes across. Now he's angled. So let's find our starting and our finishing point, remember? So I'm trying to find the bit where his mouth starts. So that is on this side, that high up. And he's looking grumpy actually. He's coming down to there. And then that one is coming up, and it doesn't come across. So it comes round here, turns up, and then over. Then we go, Maisie, come out from under the table. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Oh dear, if you should see under my table, there is insides of giraffe stuffing everywhere. So let's go back to our picture. Come across, we've got an eye. So I'm looking at that distance from there to there. I'm working out now. His eye isn't round, is it? Look at the picture. It's like it's oval. Dark shape. That comes over. So this is all going to be pink when we paint it in there. I'm looking up for where that point is. So that point is about there. And then the crown actually comes across. Can you see there? So that's where that bit is. Oh, he's starting to look like a chicken now, isn't he? There's a little fluffy bit there. Now I'm just coming back. We've got this lovely curve. Can you see where his tail feathers are? So we know that bit. Now we have our beak in. we know where this bit is. And look at these lovely curves. These are the exciting bits. These are the bits kind of feathery. So we can use some feathery pencil marks in there. There's a feather sticking out. I don't know if I want to put that in actually. Looks a bit scruffy. Up to you if you put it all in. Remember, we've got artistic license. Just double checking everything. I think this might need to come out a tiny bit maybe. So coming up, we're going round and then we're coming up to this lovely red bit. Or pinky actually, isn't it? And then I think we need to go a little bit further out. So I'm continually looking and adjusting. Your chances of getting this right first time, you'd be lucky. So we're always, this is why we do a drawing first. Just looking and changing. We've got feathery bits. So that's looking quite good. I'm quite pleased with that. Let's come back to here. Now, this is the point where we've got this V. So I'm going to put that V in because that's going to help me that there's a dark bit in there. All of these, this is where we're going to look at what shape, what angle he's going in, his feathery bits. This one goes this way. So this is where we use our pointing finger to help us to concentrate, especially when we have so much of something. When we have so many feathery bits, we can use our pencil and our finger working together. There's a dark bit in there. You've got to look at that, lovely. So I pick out the bits. I'm not putting every one in, but I'm trying to hint. So I pick out the ones that I like the shape of and put them in. So these ones over there, can you see they turn? So now that feather is pointing that way. This feather next to it's pointing that way. And he's got another one on top. And so there's none that we can see there. We've got a few that are over here. Where are these going? So these are going in this direction. Another one in that direction. So as they come down here, they start coming kind of down and curved. This one we've got, and then they go this way. So what these do is really help with the shape of him. They help us to see that, give him some form, that he's a curved chicken, not a flat chicken. So these ones are all curving out this way. Now let's get this leg in while we're here. There's not a lot of detail in this wing just while I'm here. So we're not going to put it in, maybe just a few hints, but actually most of our detail and stuff is over in this section. So where is his foot? Well, we know it's kind of down here. Let's do a line up. So imagine a straight line up. Comes to the side. There. Now, he's a bit of a funky chicken, isn't he? He's got this angle. It's like he's just about to start dancing. So that leg is going to go out that way. Just going to put a few of these feathers in while I'm here. Really focusing on what direction they're going in. Kind of two levels there. Then we can work out this leg. So again, imaginary line up actually comes where the tail is, which is there. Now this one isn't as angled, so you're going to give him a bit more character when you've got one leg coming out and one staying in the same position. It's going to make him a bit fuller on this side. So this is narrower, then it gets wider. Now we haven't got a full foot foot, so we're going to make it up a bit. So this is going to go there. He's got a toe. We're just going to curve that. They have like a fingernail bit, don't they? So we're just going to make that up. We're going to put some splattering and some shadow anyway. So it's just a rough shape. Now this one comes down. This one here comes a bit more there. There's like a back. I don't know what you call it, toe. This one comes a little bit webbed, aren't they, when we look at this one? So I'm learning some information about this one. Curves up, maybe not that much. And we've got a foot coming up there. They're weird shapes, aren't they? But we'll do a bit of straw, I think, and a bit of grass, and so that they're less noticeable on when we get the shadow in there. So let's have a look now. I think we've kind of got everything in the place. We're going to get rid of our working lines. So any of these straight lines, we don't want to be focusing on that. So let's get rid of any of them. Anywhere that looks dirty. You don't want to rub too hard with your hand when you rub it off, because you'll smudge all your drawing. But hopefully you can see all that. But I've done it dark enough. Don't do yours as dark at home, but he looks a bit weird his eye, but he'll look nice when we... There's a bit here actually. Let's bring that bit around so we don't have to think about it when we come to paint it. And I think that's it for our drawing. Right, so now we're going to throw some paint onto our chicken. And normally, like in the duck one, sometimes we pen it, so we put black waterproof pen on. Today I thought we'd do watercolour. You can always put pen on afterwards if we want to, but I thought we'd try a different technique than the duck one. And we're also going to do a bit more in terms of a background, which is what we're going to start off with now. So what I wanted to go through first though was a little bit of colour theory. So our three primary colours are red, yellow and blue, and they're called primary colours because you can't mix them from anything else. So if you went to a desert island and you only could take 3 tubes of paint, you would take these 3 because you can make any colour from them. So if we mixed purple, if we mix red and blue, we make purple. If we mix blue and yellow, we make green. And if we mix red and yellow, we make orange. So this is really useful as well because of opposite colours. So these are the opposite colours on the colour wheel. So red is opposite green, blue is opposite yellow, and purple is opposite yellow. Did I say orange? Blue and orange, purple and yellow? Okay. So what you would do when we're looking at this background of the green, the whole point that I'm trying to make this point, is if you have a look at what greens you have in your watercolour set. So this one is a hooker's green. This one is a sap green, okay? And we then compare them to our picture. They're too bright, aren't they? So we could, if we wanted a really bright picture, use them from our palette, or we could actually mix them to make a better colour. So if I take some of this is hooker's green, but you can try this with whatever greens you've got in your palette, and then I add, so the opposite colour is red. If I add, bear in mind it's really strong, a tiny bit of red into my green, can you see, I'm going to lift it up, it dulls it off. Can you see it basically neutralises the green, makes it less bright a colour. So let me show you with some sap green. So you will sometimes need, if it's a really sunny day, you will need those brighter greens. But sometimes we just want to be able to tone it down. So there, that's more autumnal, isn't it? Can you see just a bit of red calms them down? The other thing you could add in, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it looks quite blue. So let's take, I'm just going to make some more so you can see again. Hooker's green. Lots of paint. Can you see it's quite dark? I don't want it too light, so not a lot of water. I'm using lots of paint. I'm adding some red and I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue. So again, I didn't go back into my water because I don't want to make it waterier. Then we can have a look. This is really dull, but we don't need to go that dull. But we do want it to look realistic and not too kind of out there. So we're going to start on this left hand side here, and we're going to be quick. We're going to be quick because it dries really quickly, and I'm going to use my brush to help me to go around the edge of the chicken. Don't leave what I call a halo, like a white edge. We want to come right up to the edge of the chicken. If you've got a flat brush, you can use that to help you. I'll show you another technique. We need to see I'm scooping the paint up and I'm quickly bringing it in down here. You could also use a really fine brush. This is called a rigger, and you could pull out some of those grasses. Bear in mind, they don't all grow the same way. So they don't all grow up. Some of them are crossed over. So you want to make it look like it's a rough. Perhaps a few fine ones up there. Now, the reason I'm being quick is we're then going to add some black into that. And that's because, I'm just going to add a bit more green, because this is wet now and I'm going to release my paint. So I want it to be darker under here. So I release the paint and then I'm going to just encourage that to just move around. Just so that we get, I'm going to go right up to that foot, I think. I'm just going to get my fine brush again. And just so that we can get just a bit of a difference in tone. So you could actually also perhaps take some dark blue. We're getting really creative now. Some red. You could even drop a little bit of purple in there if you wanted, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to take the excess off and I'm going to soften. Remember it depends if you watched the other video yet. If you haven't, I'm showing you a new technique. Clean your brush, take the excess off, and I'm moving that bit of paint. Can you see? So what I'm doing is trying to create a bit of a softer look. So let's go on the other side. So it was Hooker's green. You might need to make up some more paint. Don't feel that you have to keep using this tiny bit of paint. And we put a bit of red in it to dull it down, and we put a little bit of blue on it. And it doesn't matter, as long as you use the same colours, it doesn't matter that it's a slightly different colour, because it is a slightly different colour. And I'm going to put more water on this. So in watercolour, when we add more water, that's going to lighten it up. So I'm going to come on, big brush. Bear in mind this is all going to dry lighter. I'm going to put a tiny bit underneath. So I know it's not on the picture, but just to give a bit of kind of continuity. So then we're going to start. We'll put a mud bit down here, but I'm thinking about making it more of an interesting composition. So then you can start thinking about your nice, so right up on the tip of your brush, and you kind of go, because see sometimes I miss. That's okay, we're just giving it a really light touch, just to give a bit of texture. Let's get my thin rigger brush again, because he's quite fun. Remember, all different directions. Don't do uniform grass, because it isn't, no one's combed it. We could also, while we're here, because it's really good fun, is take some of that green, hold it, and just tap it. That's really nice, just around the grass bit. If it goes on your chicken, then you could just quickly, whilst it's wet, just dab that off so we don't have a mouldy green chicken. That looks quite nice, doesn't it? Now we need to quickly go back to that purple, and we need to give a bit of depth again. So, and what this is going to do is help scoop more paint, release it in, release that paint in. Just going to make it a little bit more interesting, and you know, we don't always have to follow the picture hugely. We've got some artistic license in there. That is a lot lighter than there. I'm thinking, do I want to darken it just there? But I think that's okay, because we're now going to go in and make some browns. So depending upon what browns you have in your set, so you could, if you don't have a brown, let me show you on here. If you don't have a brown, you can mix your 3 primary colours. So if we take red, yellow, that makes an orange, and then we add some blue. Okay, that's made as like a greeny brown. So that means we've got lots of blue and yellow in it. So let's add a bit more red. So we're going brown, and then you could add a tiny bit of black, and that will give you your brown. Okay, so that was red, yellow, and blue. So basically red, yellow, and blue make up different shades of grey. So in this case, we're making a brown grey. If we add more blue, we'll get a bluey grey. If we add more yellow, we get a yellowy grey. So let's have a look. So we've made that brown. I'm going to add a tiny bit of red. I think it's a bit redder than that. And we're going to come in. And it's okay if this is still wet, because we might get a nice effect so it all looks like it lives together. We could always put some grass over the feet in a bit. And I'm holding my brush quite loosely. Can you see? And I'm kind of moving the paint around. And this will help us to give like a, this is not a like a smoothed out bit of soil, is it? I'm going to clean my brush, take my excess off. I'm just going to soften that edge. See, it's quite hard. This is where Miss Chicken has been digging everywhere up. So I'm not going backwards and forwards like painting and decorating. I'm putting it, kind of moving it around, thinking about this is kind of like dug up bits of turf. Clean the brush. So when you get to the edge, you could just soften that with some clean water. A bit more paint on here. Clean the brush, take the excess off, and we're going to soften that edge there. Now, there is a darker brown, isn't there? So we need to be quick. So I'm going to get some more of your mix. I'm going to use some that I've already got, and I'm going to add some black into it. So we want this thicker paint, less water, because the thicker it is, the less it's going to travel. If it's too runny, it's going to go right into it. But we want to show, because the light can't get under him, so we're wanting to show that it's dark under here. All this, and actually if that's still wet, you could release a bit in there. Might make a funny effect, but that might be quite nice. So let's go, it's dark in that toe there, isn't it? We've got some darker bits there. And then we're going to come in, and we're going to add some black. So we're going to darker bits in here. I've kind of gone over his foot, so I'm just using my finger. You could use a bit of tissue just to pull that out under that foot. And perhaps a few little bits, rough it up a bit. You could do a tiny bit of splattering with the brown, so that kind of looks like it's... Again, if it goes on your chicken, quickly take it out whilst it's wet. Take that bit around the outside. Maybe a few more down here. So if I get really close, it's still really wet, so it's going to fill in. But nice. I think that looks good. His feet are standing out a bit too much at the moment because they're white, but we will put paint on. We can't put paint on there yet because it'll all just blend in. So that is, I think, our bottom bit. And I think we'll leave it as a vignette, so it's kind of fading out here, isn't it? Fading out. If you've got bits you don't like, clean your brush, take the excess off. See that hard line? Just soften it, move the paint around. You're in charge. Okay, so now with the top bit, the reason we're doing a background is he's a white chicken. So we could use black pen and he'll still show up, but he won't show up as much unless we have this coloured background. So on the picture, we've actually got all these kind of industrial looking stuff, which is fine if you want to put that, but I thought we might make it a bit more exciting and pretend he's out in a farmyard somewhere and it's nice and sunny. So I'm going to let me get my bigger brush. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to get some blue. I've just filled my cerulean art, so it's not dried yet, so it's very fresh. What do you think? Because he's got some blue in there. So I think that might tie, and he's got brown reflected in there. So I think blue might be quite nice to put in. So we don't want it too dark though. We're just going to hint around the top of him, because that colour will then make him stand out. So we're going to put some paint on. I'm not going to do it all over. I'm going to do it slowly because then I can make a decision. So I'm going to probably do a bit of that shape. Clean my brush, take the excess off. I'm just going to soften. I can always add a little bit more in a second, but I'm doing kind of circular motions. Can you see? So kind of hinting clouds and hard line there. Just clean the brush, take the excess off. And then we can always drop in a little bit more paint because that's all wet now. Maybe come down a little bit. I've got to watch because those green bits are still going to be wet. And otherwise we'll have a bit of a mess. But you can let yours dry in between. I'm not going to go right up, I don't think. Oh, my water's dirty. Keep your water nice and clean. Just drop in a little bit more paint. So I've got cerulean and a bit of ultramarine there. Clean the brush, take the excess off. I really need clean water. Let's do a bit on the other side. So mix your paint up first. Always get prepared. Blue. Ooh, that's a little bit too much. If you put too much on, wipe it off, add a bit more water. Let's come over this side now, because this will make his fluffy tails. And you can, like here, see we've got the feathery bits. If we use our brush and we do go in basically to the negative space, you can leave that white bit. So I've created those white feathers by actually going in with the blue. And you see, it's good, nice technique. come up to his beak because that's nice and light. More paint. My brush went all dry. Did you hear it? Start making a scraping noise. Clean my brush. Take the excess off. Let's soften this out. Clean the brush. Take the excess off. Soften this out. And you get a nice soft look. Bit more paint in down here. Clean the brush. So remember, the sky comes all the way down to the land. Doesn't just stay up the top. Some children seem to think it's sky at the top, land at the bottom. Actually, we just kind of hint, maybe you could put, if that's dry now, so a little bit of your blue in there, just to show that. Right, a bit more paint, and then we're going to let all of this dry. So the thing with watercolours that's different than any other paint is all these magical things that happen when it's drying. So I'm releasing. I hope everybody is tapping. When it's wet, it's got to be wet, you release and you let watercolour play. You let the watercolour give you this lovely effect. You don't need to do the work. Clean the brush. Take the excess off. We're going to soften that up. Clean the brush. Take the excess off. So I'm just trying to get that to fade away. If you're struggling, I've got dirty tissue, you could just dab right on the edge. Don't dab in your picture because you'll ruin the paint. But actually, I think that looks quite good. I've just got really dirty water. So this is the time when you go, Mum, Dad, clean my water. Whoever's looking after you. Okay, I think we're going to leave him like that. So we've got some soil, some leaves and some sky, and we need to let that dry before we come back to him. We can always add some more bits on, but it's better just to let that bit dry. Okay? Right, so the background has now dried and we can start painting in our chicken. So we're going to start off actually just with some dark paint, just to get the eye in so that it's going to dry. So we've got an oval shape. There's a little highlight on the back and then it's brown. So I'm just going to ever so carefully, using the tip of the brush, get that shape in so that can dry. Actually, whilst I've got this on my brush, I'm going to go, there's a bit in the beak here that I'm going to get in as well. So we'll let that dry and then we'll come back to it in a minute. Actually, I'm just going to add some brown to that because I've just noticed there's a brown bit. So we don't want to touch that bit because it's all going to bleed, but there's a bit around here, kind of goes up to a point. I'm just going to get that bit in as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what colours. So before we dive in, let me grab a paintbrush. So we've got some bluey grey bits in here. There's a warmer bit, so the light is coming from this direction and from up here. So these are warmer colours. So these are more kind of yellows or pinkies, but very, very, very pale because it's basically white, but with a bit of warmth on. A tiny bit there. And this is all cool blues. Then actually at the bottom where it's reflected, the light's reflected a bit. These are browny greys down here. So we're kind of thinking bluey greys, browny greys, kind of yellowy, very pale greys. Okay, so we're going to start off with the light bits. So in my palette is some yellow ochre, which is like a goldy colour. Now we don't want this too dark, it's because he's a white chicken, but we want to just show this warmth. So I'm adding lots of water into that mix. And then I'm holding my brush quite lightly. And I'm leaving lots of white gaps. I'm just wanting to hint. Oh, there's that bit's red there, isn't it? Let's put that back in. Clean my brush. Take the excess off. And I'm just going to soften that in. I don't want any hard edges. You could have, if you want to, just take your pencil marks back. I've left mine quite hard. I wouldn't normally have them this solid, but it's because I want you to be able to see at home. And I'm literally thinking about the shapes of the feathers. So I'm going, as when we were drawing, we want to go in line with which way the feathers are going. So we pick up, oh, that shouldn't be on there, but that's fine. I'm just going to wake that up, that bit of blue that sneaked on his back, and we can just lift that up. I'm going to clean my brush just in case there's any blue left. And we're literally just flicking on some bits of warmth, basically. Very subtle. Don't go with some luminous yellow. This is very subtle because he's white. Okay, so we're going to leave that, and we're going to now take up this blue colour, this bluey grey. So I've got some cobalt blue. Let me just wipe that off. It might be a bit of cerulean, I'm thinking, actually. So I'm going to take cerulean, but like more of a turquoisey. And I'm going to add some black, a bit more. And I'm going to take a bit of that paint and I'm going to move it over here because it's quite dark, but I might want that darker colour, but I want a lighter version. So instead of keep adding water on there, I've just taken a bit of that and I'm just going to test it on a piece of paper to see. I think it's a bit warmer, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of French ultramarine into that mix just to warm it up. So that would be a darker version. And this would be our lighter version. Yeah, I think that's quite good. Right, so we've got a lighter bit there. So I'm not going to put any paint there. And we want to kind of hint at this feathery bit. So our brush strokes, we're going to use our brush strokes to hint. So I'm going to go on the side of my brush. And I'm just kind of flicking more than anything. This is still a bit wet, but actually sometimes that can make quite a nice effect. We've got blue here, so I'm literally looking for bits of cold, bits of blue. Down here, back in. This is, if you squint your eyes and look at your picture, that'll tell you where the majority of your colours are, like your tones. So if you squint your eyes, you'll see this kind of blue. I'm going to clean the brush. I'm just going to soften that in so it's not such a hard edge. We do want some hard edges because there are hard edges with his feathers. So this is coming all blue. So you see that contrast between that. So in order for this to stand out, we do need this bit. And clean my brush, take the excess off. I'm going to just soften. I'm literally lifting up that paint, wiping it on my tissue. And I'm just softening that in. I quite like that. See that bit of white there? That's really showing featheriness. So back here, I'm still thinking about those shapes. Now we've got a bit of a bluey grey here, haven't we? Which then shows the difference. I'm going to go with a little bit of the darker. And I'm going to come in here a bit, and that will help to show with the feathery kind of look as well. I'll clean my brush, take the excess off, and I'm just going to soften that up because we could use some of this blue in between That will just kind of give more of a look. So it would be on the bottom of the feather. So if the light's coming from here, down here. Now if you run out of your light one, just take some of your darker one and add some more water, and we've got some more paint. So I'm now working over this way, so my direction of my brush strokes is going to change because his feathers are going in a different direction. So you're going to come here, and then he's got some bits which are kind of, all this blue back there, and then some bits here. It's kind of transitioning. He's looking nice and feathery and short, sharp sometimes. So we're going to change into darker. I'm just going to put a bit of, I think it's a bit purpley, but I'll just put a little bit of that in there. So we use, let's make that colour again. Let me wipe this off. So cerulean and a bit of black, but not that much. Let's add some more. You could always wipe half off, put a bit more paint in, make it quicker. And I'm going to add a bit of brown, maybe a bit more blue. So what we're trying to get is more of a grey, but a slightly warmer grey. Let's have a look at that. Where's my tester? Here we go. That is looking green, too much green, so we need to add some brown. This is why these testers are quite good. Actually, I'm just going to add a bit of red, just to really get that bit of warmth in it. That's better. Okay, same kind of brush strokes. I'm just squinting my eyes, and I'm going to make a decision. I'm just taking that, it's quite a lot on there, so I'm just taking that and moved that bit around. I'm just going to make as well a bit more of this darker, so we've got somewhere in between, so cerulean and a tiny bit of black, so that we're kind of using a bit of both in here. So we've got these darker bits coming into play as well, using negative space down here. So it's kind of this blue, but there's also brown. So we're going to probably go through both colours. So we're introducing both colours, and it's going to make it a little bit more interesting. So this bit, there's hardly any light coming onto here. And even though it looks lighter, that actually compared, if you can see that colour there compared to there, it's much further down the side. So this is still a lot darker than these bits. So I keep changing between my grey blue and my browny blue. That then comes up. Now we've got, where's my brown? There's a bit of a line of these feathers. Comes up. Clean my brush, take the excess off. I'm going to move that. So I want it to look feathery. So I'm kind of pulling and pulling and pushing, and pulling, and then trying to suggest these feathers. We don't want too much of a line, but it's all dark under here. Let's get some more of that grey mixed in. So there's actually no white here. A few fluffy bits kind of coming out. So This is called wet in wet. So we're taking both of these colours, which were, in my case, burnt sienna and black and cerulean. So it's just a warmer version of this cerulean. So just making a bit more paint. It's looking, see that there's too much of a contrast at the moment, so we're going to build our way up. So we want to get less of a, so anywhere that I kind of see a feathery bit, clean the brush. I'm going to soften some of this, and softening it will give you that kind of half tone, so between your really dark and your light. So we got some darker bits between these feathers. Can you see I'm kind of trying to capture, I mean we could sit and draw every single feather, but instead we're trying to hint, we're trying to tell the viewer. I'm going to take that, make some more of the light version. That's a little bit dark. If it goes a bit dark, clean your brush, take the excess off, lift it off. You're in charge. You could even drastically just dab that, take it back, put a bit more paint on. We're looking anywhere that looks feathery. That's the texture that we're looking for. So I'm squinting my eyes, you can't see, but I'm squinting, trying to just get rid of the shapes and really look at my tone and my colour. Just building up. This is really dark. Dropping in some paint. Around here, some darker bits. Building him up. Now we've got this really dark bit under here. Comes all the way. Kind of under his chin. If chickens have chin. And then I'm pulling that bit out. Show some of those feathery bits. A bit dark. It's quite dark under there, isn't it? Because the light can't get there. You could go to your thinner brush, so in here my rigger. Ooh, it's all a bit wet. But you could then get some finer bits. Showing, especially on this front bit. Dab that bit a bit too much. Bit of a lighter version. We don't want to do it all over. Few bits. Just trying to show you some different techniques of how to get these feathery bits. that brown bit, and I'm just going to put a little bit. That's a bit too dark, so I'm going to leave it on there. Put some more water, take it off. Right, if you've got any hard bits, you can just soften. Maybe a bit more of the bluey grey. Get the other brush. Just done this bit here. A little bit more colour. Watercolour dries 50% lighter generally, so just losing a bit. I think we're going to leave it. We're just doing an impression, aren't we? So I think that's enough. We don't want to overwork it, put too much paint on it. So we'll let that dry. We'll have a look at this red now. So cadmium red. Let's put a bit on. Then we can judge it. Ooh, that's not bad, is it? I was thinking it might need a tiny bit of alizarin crimson, which would make it a bit pinkier. But actually, if we add some water in there, bear in mind this is going to dry lighter. So I did put a bit of alizarin. Now remember we've got some white edges, so on the edge of there, you're going to come up, so you're looking out for white bits. So you come down, touch onto his beak, and it comes down. I'm going to go back up here so I don't get a hard edge. Come around here. Oh, it's starting to look like a chicken now. It's a little bit lighter, isn't it? Can you see there? I'm just going to get a bit more paint while it's wet, and I'm going to drop it in. You know we were talking about releasing? So we're releasing that paint in so it'll go a bit darker. I'm going to clean my brush, take the excess off, and I'm going to soften that so it goes pink, but a little bit shows that light. Bear in mind, I'm kind of over-exaggerating this because it is going to dry lighter. So there's some flicky, kind of feathery lines there. We're going to go around his eye. Here. Okay, grab a bit more paint and I'm just going to drop it, release it in that corner. And here, so it's a little bit darker. Now, less water, more paint, so we need a bit more red, perhaps a tiny bit of alizarin crimson. Now we're going to come and do these weird things. It's a bit too dark, so I've just added some water. We're going to put that dark shadow on afterwards, so don't worry about that. Clean my brush, take it off, and we're just going to put that bit on. It's looking like a chicken. This comes up a little bit more than my drawing, so I'm still, even when I'm painting, if I haven't got my drawing quite right. There's pink here, perhaps a few kind of feathery bits in there. Nice little touch. This comes around there. And a few feathery bits in there. It's kind of pinky and a bit of grey in there, so we'll just put a bit of that in. Might want to add a little bit of yellow. I've just added a bit of cadmium orange. I just think maybe we could do with being a bit brighter in a few places. going to come down here. We're going to put the shadow in afterwards. I just wanted to, whilst it was still wet, I know it's not as okay. Clean the brush. I'm just going to lift a little bit of this dark paint out with my brush and wipe it on my tissue. And I'm just going to drop a bit more paint because I think that went a little bit straight there. Okay, let's have one more look before we leave it. I think there's maybe some more. I'll put them in. Okay, is he looking like a chicken? Right, we're going to go back to our grey colours. Can you see on the feet the browny colour? And there's this pinky colour, but it's a tricky colour, this one. So we're going to take some of our red and I'm going to add some of the yellow ochre, but not that much. There's a bit of grey in there. To make kind of maybe a bit more red, just to make this middle colour. So we're not doing the dark colour. It's kind of like a pinky, peachy, hard to describe. I've missed that bit, but that's okay. And that bit, we've gone over with the brown. Beauty of watercolour, look. I'm going to wake that bit of paint up and I'm going to take it back. Easy peasy. We'll come and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Let's just get this in. So I'm still wanting to show that light. I'm taking that out. There. Let's get that colour. So that was kind of our ready bit with some yellow ochre and a tiny bit of that grey brown actually that was in my palette. Just dirtied it off because we don't want too bright coloured feet. This one's, we're going to go around with some brown in a minute to get the shape back. And I'm going to go back into that grey. Now depending, I think this is going to be too wet. I put a bit on and try it. It's too wet, so we're going to come back to that. Let's get some, actually, I've just spotted something in this colour here. I think some of that would look really nice in this tail. So this is where we're trying to create harmony. So I'm going to put a bit on, and harmony within the painting so it all looks like it's marrying together. And actually sometimes using a colour, say from the feet in here, will give a really nice effect. Still thinking feathery. Feathery, feathery, feathery. And I'm going to take a bit of that and I'm also going to add that up here. I can see here there's some like lines, quite light. Clean my brush, soften it in. I'm just going to let that dry a minute, okay? Right, so we're just going to go and finish off working downwards. We're going to see how we can improve it, and we've got still a few bits to finish off. So first thing is, I've just been lightening this little bit. So there are some bits that you could probably lift out. So you're basically getting clean water, you're wiggling on the paint and then you're dabbing it off and it'll just lift a little bit of the paint out. So for example on this bit, that's a bit lighter, so we're going to lift that bit on this edge a little bit lighter, just like softening or moving around the paint a bit. I'm going to use some of that colour that we used on the feet, just a bit on his beak, so it's not neat white. in there, and we need to go in darker, but we will do that in a minute. I've left a little triangle of light there as well. So we need some of that grey, the browny grey that we had. If you've got a smaller brush, and we could just flick in a few, there are like here, a few darker bits. It's darker in here. And we've got this dark shadow shape. So just putting that in. So we're trying to show light and dark, and on this side here, like that. You could just clean the brush, take the excess off, just soften that bit if you don't want a hard edge. We've got some light brown around his eye. We're going to get that in as well. And maybe a bit of that brown. I can see here that's quite hard, that edge, so I'm just going to wiggle that dark bit. Just move that around. Let's see if this is dry. Yeah, that's dry. Drying quickly. So we've got some darker bits there and actually some darker bits under here. Soften that a little bit. Just going to take some of our pinky, just wake that up a bit. And get, there's a little white gap I've got there. Just going to fill that in a bit. I've lost my white highlight, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, some of our sky colour, which was, I think, let me go to a bit bigger brush. A little bit of cobalt and a bit of ultramarine, maybe not that dark. Some water to add, lighten it up. And you could go back in, so this is really your background colour, and you could go back in and just, this is see-through in a few of these places, so we're basically now filling in the background colour, just so it looks like it's see-through. A bit there. What else can we do? Just going to strengthen that dark bit up a bit, and maybe a bit of this brown colour around his eye there. Now, if that's dry around the eye, if you have any white gouache, so white gouache is opaque, you can, if you lose your highlight, you could just put that in and that will just make him come alive a bit there. You can also, so say for example here, just to show you, you can put the white opaque on top, which will give you even more feathery effects if you want. Depends how much detail you want to go into. We're going to come down to the legs now. So that dark grey brown colour that we had earlier, we're now going to get on these legs now that they're dry, to tone these down a bit. And I'm going to do some more of the brown because I've lost the shape a little bit, but that's no problem. And I'm going to bring a little bit of that brown. If you do just a few kind of contour marks, you'll make it look like there's a bit of shape. You're kind of trying to hint that this is a curved shape, not a flat shape. Going back to the bit of grey, a bit of blue, and a bit of, sorry, green, blue and red. You could, if you wanted, put a few grasses on the end of some of these. Maybe that's a bit dark, but just dab it off if it's a bit dark, add some more water. So I was thinking kind of not just one solid. You know, you get like the seed ends on the end of grass, like long grass. You could just make them a little bit more interesting. A bit over here too. So random, don't go too kind of patterned, symmetrical, just kind of hinting that there's more in here. But we don't want to go overboard, otherwise we're going to be here all day long, fiddling, fiddling, fiddling. But you're just trying to hint that there's maybe something on top of there. Now, let's go back to, I'm just going to go a little bit darker, so brown and black, with my thin brush, my rigger brush. Just make that a little bit darker. He does look a little bit grumpy, doesn't he? But he does in the picture. It's a cross chicken, isn't he? So I'm going to go, this bit's a bit darker in there. So I'm just going to use a bit feathery. Just soften that so it's not too much. Might go even darker on these legs, right on the side. I'm using the same colour, so we've got harmony. Maybe even a bit of that pinky. Just show there's a bit of colour in there. I've made him very cross now, haven't I? Soften that. Right. Let me get my bigger paintbrush. Let's go back. This, I'm not that happy with this bit. So when you're reviewing, this is kind of your bit at the end. You've mainly got everything in. But these feet don't look like they're sitting down to me yet. So I'm using kind of the tip of my brush and I'm moving the paint around. And I'm doing this to kind of get some more form on the, or more shape on his feet. But also kind of to lose the feet a bit, because they're not being rude to Mr. Chicken, but they're not his best feature, I don't think. So some dark clumps of earth in here. We're putting it on, moving it around, using my fingers sometimes because it's fun. Now I'd made this one too long, hadn't I? So I need to get rid of that bit. Clean my brush, take the excess off, wiggle it around. Let's get dark in there. And here. I lost this one as well. It looks massive, like a worm. So let's get rid of that and here. Bit more time doing my drawing, I think, next time. Get too excited to put the paint on. So I put it on and I soften it off. And we're still going to leave, I quite like that bit back there. Tap it on. It is going to, whilst it's wet, blend in, but might be quite nice to show. If it goes anywhere you don't want, quickly whilst it's wet, drop it in. I'm going to go a little bit darker on these feet. I'm using that kind of brown colour. So it doesn't matter if bits go over because it'll look like his feet are in the mud, which they are. So let's have a look. Anything else we want to change? Maybe a little bit more colour, I think, just in here, in his beak. Just in that corner bit. A bit more colour. It's going to go in. Just going to curve that eye, that highlight back and around. I'm just trying to make him look less grumpy. Maybe I'm going to pull that back a bit. So what we can do, so you could take some of your gouache, so your white gouache, and add it with a little bit of yellow. So that's some cadmium yellow there. Maybe with a bit of that's got the pinky, so it's less. Now, if this was dry, which it's not going to be dry, you could also a bit of yellow, a bit of red, and some white gouache. Wake up, wake up, wake up. You could kind of also put in some stick bits if you wanted. Just, you don't have to do all this stuff that I'm showing you. I'm just showing you lots of options that you then can choose whether you put in your picture or not. So, you know, some browny kind of stalks. He's been digging around in the dirt, found some roots, and they can come over his feet. That will give less. You could even, hopefully if it's dry enough, put some white on there, show that there's some highlight. And I think I'm faffing now, but you get the idea. And I think that's everything. Mr. Chicken, let me see if I can lift him up a little bit higher and you can have a look. He's a little bit cross. You can see some of the feathery brush strokes there. Bit of splattering, using our brush, softening the edges. So I think I'm going to leave him, and hope your chickens work out really good too. Remember, you can show me them on Elaine Marston Artist Studio. That's my Facebook page, Elaine Marston Artist Studio, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye.